Bible in Basic English. The Second Book of Kings. Chapter 1. After the death of Ahab, Moab made itself free from the authority of Israel. Now Ahaziah had a fall from the window of his room in Samaria, and was ill. And he sent men, and said to them, "Put a question to Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, about the outcome of my disease, to see if I will get well or not." But the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite, "Go now, and, meeting the men sent by the king of Samaria, say to them, Is it because there is no God in Israel, that you are going to get directions from Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Give ear then to the words of the Lord. You will never again get down from the bed onto which you have gone up, but death will certainly come to you." Then Elijah went away. And the men he had sent came back to the king, and he said to them, "Why have you come back?" And they said to him, "On our way we had a meeting with a man who said, 'Go back to the king who sent you and say to him, The Lord says, Is it because there is no God in Israel that you sent to put a question to Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? For this reason, you will not come down from the bed onto which you have gone up, but death will certainly come to you." And he said to them, "What sort of a man was it who came and said these words to you?" And they said in answer, "He was a man clothed in a coat of hair, with a leather band about his body." Then he said, "It is Elijah the Tishbite." Then the king sent to him a captain of 50 with his 50 men, and he went up to him where he was seated on the top of a hill, and said to him, "O man of God, the king has said, Come down." And Elijah in answer said to the captain of 50, "If I am a man of God, may fire come down from heaven on you and on your 50 men, and put an end to you." Then fire came down from heaven and put an end to him and his 50 men. Then the king sent another captain of 50 with his 50 men, and he said to Elijah, "O man of God, the king says, Come down quickly." And Elijah in answer said, "If I am a man of God, may fire come down from heaven on you and on your 50 men, and put an end to you." And the fire of God came down from heaven, and put an end to him and his 50 men. Then he sent a third captain of 50 with his 50 men, and the third captain of 50 went up, and falling on his knees before Elijah, requesting mercy of him, said, "O man of God, let my life and the life of these your 50 servants be of value to you." For fire came down from heaven and put an end to the first 2 captains of 50 and their 50s, but now let my life be of value in your eyes. Then the angel of the Lord said to Elijah, "Go down with him. Have no fear of him." So he got up and went down with him to the king. And he said to him, "This is the word of the Lord, because you sent men to put a question to Beelzebub, the god of Ekron. For this reason you will never again get down from the bed onto which you have gone up, but death will certainly come to you." So death came to him, as the Lord had said by the mouth of Elijah. And Jehoram became king in his place in the 2nd year of the rule of Jehoram, son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, because he had no son. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaziah, are they not recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel? Chapter 2. Now when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a great wind, Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. And Elijah said to Elisha, "Come no farther, for the Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha said, "As the Lord is living and as your soul is living, I will not be parted from you." So they went down to Bethel. And at Bethel the sons of the prophets came out to Elisha and said, "Has it been made clear to you that the Lord is going to take away your master from over you today?" And he said, "Yes, I have knowledge of it, say no more." Then Elijah said to him, "Come no farther, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As the Lord is living and as your soul is living, I will not be parted from you." So they went on to Jericho. And at Jericho the sons of the prophets came up to Elisha and said to him, "Has it been made clear to you that the Lord is going to take away your master from over you today?" And he said in answer, "Yes, I have knowledge of it, say no more." Then Elijah said to him, "Come no farther, for the Lord has sent me to Jordan." But he said, "As the Lord is living and as your soul is living, I will not be parted from you." So they went on together. And 50 men of the sons of the prophets went out and took their places facing them a long way off, while the 2 of them were by the edge of Jordan. Then Elijah took off his robe, and, rolling it up, gave the water a blow with it, and the waters were parted, flowing back this way and that, so that they went over on dry land. And when they had come to the other side, Elijah said to Elisha, "Say what you would have me do for you before I am taken from you." And Elisha said, "Be pleased to let a special measure of your spirit be on me." And he said, "You have made a hard request. Still, if you see me when I am taken from you, you will get your desire, but if not, it will not be so." And while they went on their way, going on talking together, suddenly there were carriages and horses of fire separating them from one another, and Elijah went up to heaven in a great wind. And when Elisha saw it, he gave a cry, my father, the carriages of Israel and its horsemen." And he saw him no longer, and he was full of grief. Then he took up Elijah's robe, which had been dropped from him, and went back till he came to the edge of Jordan. And he took Elijah's robe, which had been dropped from him, and giving the water a blow with it, said, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" And at his blow the waters were parted this way and that, and Elisha went over. And when the sons of the prophets who were facing him at Jericho saw him, they said, "The spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha." And they came out to him, and went down on the earth before him. And they said, "Your servants have with us here 50 strong men. Be pleased to let them go in search of Elijah, for it may be that the Spirit of the Lord has taken him up and put him down on some mountain or in some valley." But he said, "Do not send them." But when they kept on requesting him, he was shamed and said, "Send, then." So they sent 50 men, but after searching for 3 days, they came back without having seen him. And they came back to him while he was still at Jericho, and he said to them, "Did I not say to you, go not?" Now the men of the town said to Elisha, "You see that the position of this town is good, but the water is bad, causing the young of the cattle to come to birth dead." So he said, "Get me a new vessel, and put salt in it." And they took it to him. Then he went out to the spring from which the water came, and put salt in it, and said, "The Lord says, now I have made this water sweet. No longer will it be death-giving or unfertile." And the water was made sweet again to this day, as Elisha said. Then from there he went up to Bethel, and on his way, some little boys came out from the town and made sport of him, crying, "Go up, old no-hair! Go up, old no-hair!" And turning back, he saw them, and put a curse on them in the name of the Lord. And 2 she-bears came out of the wood and put 42 of the children to death. From there he went to Mount Carmel, and came back from there to Samaria. Chapter 3. And Jehoram, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel and Samaria in the 18th year of the rule of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and he was king for 12 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, but not like his father and his mother, for he put away the stone pillar of Baal which his father had made. But still he did the same sins which Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, did and made Israel do. He went on in them. Now Mesha, king of Moab, was a sheep farmer, and he gave regularly to the king of Israel the wool from 100,000 lambs and 100,000 sheep. But when Ahab was dead, the king of Moab got free from the authority of the king of Israel. At that time, King Jehoram went out from Samaria and got all Israel together in fighting order. And he sent to Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, saying, "The king of Moab has got free from my authority. Will you go with me to make war on Moab?" And he said, "I will go with you. I am as you are, my people as your people, and my horses as your horses." And he said, "Which way are we to go?" And he said in answer, "By the wasteland of Edom." So the king of Israel went with the king of Judah and the king of Edom by a roundabout way for 7 days, and there was no water for the army or for the beasts they had with them. And the king of Israel said, "Here is trouble, for the Lord has got these 3 kings together to give them into the hands of Moab." But Jehoshaphat said, "Is there no prophet of the Lord here, through whom we may get directions from the Lord?" And one of the king of Israel's men said in answer, Elisha, the son of Shaphat, is here, who was servant to Elijah. And Jehoshaphat said, The word of the Lord is with him. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. But Elisha said to the king of Israel, What have I to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father and your mother. And the king of Israel said, No, for the Lord has got these 3 kings together to give them up into the hands of Moab. Then Elisha said, By the life of the Lord of armies whose servant I am, if it was not for the respect I have for Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, I would not give a look at you, or see you. But now, get me a player of music, and it will come about that while the man is playing, the hand of the Lord will come on me and I will give you the word of the Lord. And they got a player of music, and while the man was playing, the hand of the Lord was on him. And he said, The Lord says, I will make this valley full of water holes. For the Lord says, Though you see no wind or rain, the valley will be full of water, and you and your armies and your beasts will have drink. And this will be only a small thing to the Lord. In addition he will give the Moabites into your hands. And you are to put every walled town to destruction, cutting down every good tree, and stopping up every water spring, and making all the good land rough with stones. Now in the morning, about the time when the offering was made, they saw water flowing from the direction of Edom till the country was full of water. Now all Moab, hearing that the kings had come to make war against them, got together all who were able to take up arms and went forward to the edge of the country. And early in the morning they got up, when the sun was shining on the water, and they saw the water facing them as red as blood. Then they said, This is blood. It is clear that destruction has come on the kings. They have been fighting one another. Now come, Moab, let us take their goods. But when they came to the tents of Israel, the Israelites came out and made a violent attack on the Moabites, so that they went in flight before them. And they went forward still attacking them, pulling down the towns, covering every good field with stones, stopping up all the water springs, and cutting down all the good trees. They went on driving Moab before them till only in Kirhezeth were there any Moabites, and the fighting men went round the town raining stones on it. And when the king of Moab saw that the fight was going against him, he took with him 700 men armed with swords, with the idea of forcing a way through to the king of Aram, but they were not able to do so. Then he took his oldest son, who would have been king after him, offering him as a burnt offering on the wall. So there was great wrath against Israel, and they went away from him, back to their country. Chapter 4. Now a certain woman, the wife of one of the sons of the prophets, came crying to Elisha and said, Your servant my husband is dead, and to your knowledge he was a worshipper of the Lord, but now, the creditor has come to take my 2 children as servants in payment of his debt. Then Elisha said to her, What am I to do for you? Say now, what have you in the house? And she said, Your servant has nothing in the house but a pot of oil. Then he said, Go out to all your neighbors and get vessels, a very great number of them. Then go in, and, shutting the door on yourself and your sons, put oil into all these vessels, putting on one side the full ones. So she went away, and when the door was shut on her and her sons, they took the vessels to her and she put oil into them. And when all the vessels were full, she said to her son, Get me another vessel. And he said, There are no more. And the flow of oil was stopped. So she came to the man of God and gave him word of what she had done. And he said, Go and get money for the oil and make payment of your debt, and let the rest be for the needs of yourself and your sons. Now there came a day when Elisha went to Shunem, and there was a woman of high position living there, who made him come in and have a meal with her. And after that, every time he went by, he went into her house for a meal. And she said to her husband, Now I see that this is a holy man of God, who comes by day after day. So let us make a little room on the wall, and put a bed there for him, and a table and a seat and a light, so that when he comes to us, he will be able to go in there. Now one day, when he had gone there, he went into the little room and took his rest there. And he said to Gehazi, his servant, Send for this Shunammite. So in answer to his voice she came before him. And he said to him, Now say to her, "See, you have taken all this trouble for us. What is to be done for you? Will you have any request made for you to the king or the captain of the army?" But she said, "I am living among my people." So he said, "What then is to be done for her?" And Gehazi made answer, "Still there is this, she has no son and her husband is old." Then he said, "Send for her." And in answer to his voice she took her place in the door. And Elisha said, "At this time in the coming year you will have a son in your arms." And she said, "No, my lord, O man of God, do not say what is false to your servant." Then the woman became with child and gave birth to a son at the time named, in the year after, as Elisha had said to her. Now one day, when the child was older, he went out to his father to where the grain was being cut, and he said to his father, my head, my head." And the father said to a servant, "Take him into his mother." And he took him into his mother, and she took him on her knees and kept him there till the middle of the day, when his life went from him. Then she went up and put him on the bed of the man of God, shutting the door on him, and went out. And she said to her husband, "Send me one of the servants and one of the asses so that I may go quickly to the man of God and come back again." And he said, "Why are you going to him today? It is not a new moon or a Sabbath." But she said, "It is well." Then she made the ass ready and said to her servant, "Keep driving on. Do not make a stop without orders from me." So she went, and came to Mount Carmel, to the man of God. And when the man of God saw her coming in his direction, he said to Gehazi, his servant, "See, there is the Shunammite, go quickly to her, and on meeting her say to her, 'Are you well? And your husband and the child, are they well?' And she said in answer, 'All is well.' And when she came to where the man of God was on the hill, she put her hands round his feet, and Gehazi came near with the purpose of pushing her away. But the man of God said, 'Let her be, for her soul is bitter in her, and the Lord has kept it secret from me, and has not given me word of it.' Then she said, 'Did I make a request to my Lord for a son? Did I not say, do not give me false words?' Then he said to Gehazi, 'Make yourself ready, and take my stick in your hand, and go. If you come across anyone on the way, give him no blessing, and if anyone gives you a blessing, give him no answer. And put my stick on the child's face.' But the mother of the child said, 'As the Lord is living and as your soul is living, I will not go back without you.' So he got up and went with her, and Gehazi went on before them and put the stick on the child's face, but there was no voice, and no one gave attention. So he went back, and meeting him gave him the news, saying, 'The child is not awake.' And when Elisha came into the house he saw the child dead, stretched on his bed. So he went in, and shutting the door on the two of them, made prayer to the Lord. Then he got up on the bed, stretching himself out on the child, and put his mouth on the child's mouth, his eyes on his eyes and his hands on his hands, and the child's body became warm. Then he came back, and after walking once through the house and back, he went up, stretching himself out on the child 7 times, and the child's eyes became open. And he gave orders to Gehazi, and said, 'Send for the Shunammite.' And she came in answer to his voice. And he said, 'Take up your son.' And she came in, and went down on her face to the earth at his feet. Then she took her son in her arms and went out. And Elisha went back to Gilgal. Now there was very little food in the land, and the sons of the prophets were seated before him. And he said to his servant, 'Put the great pot on the fire, and make soup for the sons of the prophets.' And one went out into the field to get green plants and saw a vine of the field, and pulling off the fruit of it till the fold of his robe was full, he came back and put the fruit, cut up small, into the pot of soup, having no idea what it was. Then they gave the men soup from the pot. And while they were drinking the soup, they gave a cry, and said, 'O man of God, there is death in the pot,' and they were not able to take any more food. But he said, 'Get some meal.' And he put it into the pot, and said, 'Now give it to the people so that they may have food.' And there was nothing bad in the pot. Now a man came from Baal Shalisha with an offering of firstfruits for the man of God, 20 barley cakes and garden fruit in his bag. And he said, "Give these to the people for food." But his servant said, "How am I to put this before 100 men?" But he said, "Give it to the people for food, for the Lord says, there will be food for them and some over." So he put it before them, and they had a meal, and there was more than enough, as the Lord had said. Chapter 5. Now Naaman, chief of the army of the king of Aram, was a man of high position with his master, and greatly respected, because by him the Lord had given salvation to Aram, but he was a leper. Now the Arameans had gone out in bands, and taken prisoner from Israel a little girl, who became servant to Naaman's wife. And she said to her master's wife, "If only my lord would go to the prophet in Samaria, he would make him well." And someone went and said to his lord, "This is what the girl from the land of Israel says." So the king of Aram said, "Go then, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel." And he went, taking with him 10 talents of silver and 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. And he took the letter to the king of Israel, in which the king of Aram had said, "See, I have sent my servant Naaman to you to be made well, for he is a leper." But the king of Israel, after reading the letter, was greatly troubled and said, "Am I God, to give death and life? Why does this man send a leper to me to be made well? Is it not clear that he is looking for a cause of war?" Now Elisha, the man of God, hearing that the king of Israel had done this, sent to the king, saying, "Why are you troubled? Send the man to me, so that he may see that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman, with all his horses and his carriages, came to the door of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a servant to him, saying, "Go to Jordan, and after washing 7 times in its waters your flesh will be well again and you will be clean." But Naaman was angry and went away and said, "I had the idea that he would come out to see such an important person as I am, and make prayer to the Lord his God, and with a wave of his hand over the place make the leper well. Are not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not be washed in them and become clean?" So turning, he went away in wrath. Then his servants came to him and said, "If the prophet had given you orders to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then, when he says to you, 'Be washed and become clean'?" Then he went down 7 times into the waters of Jordan, as the man of God had said, and his flesh became like the flesh of a little child again, and he was clean. Then he went back to the man of God, with all his train, and, taking his place before him, said, "Now I am certain that there is no God in all the earth, but only in Israel. Now then, take an offering from me." But he said, "By the life of the Lord whose servant I am, I will take nothing from you." And he did his best to make him take it, but he would not. Then Naaman said, "If you will not, then let there be given to your servant as much earth as 2 beasts are able to take on their backs, because from now on, your servant will make no offering or burnt offering to other gods, but only to the Lord. But may your servant have the Lord's forgiveness for this one thing, when my master goes into the house of Rimmon for worship there, supported on my arm, and my head is bent in the house of Rimmon. When his head is bent in the house of Rimmon, may your servant have the Lord's forgiveness for this thing." And he said to him, "Go in peace." And he went from him some distance. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, "Now my master has taken nothing from Naaman, this Aramean, of what he would have given him. By the living Lord, I will go after him and get something from him." So Gehazi went after Naaman. And when Naaman saw him running after him, he got down from his carriage and went back to him and said, "Is all well?" And he said, "All is well, but my master has sent me, saying, Even now, 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Will you give me a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothing for them?" And Naaman said, "Be good enough to take 2 talents. And forcing him to take them, he put 2 talents of silver in 2 bags, with 2 changes of clothing, and gave them to his 2 servants to take before him. When he came to the hill, he took them from their hands, and put them away in the house, and he sent the men away, and they went. Then he came in and took his place before his master. And Elisha said to him, "Where have you come from, Gehazi?" And he said, "Your servant went nowhere." And he said to him, "Did not my heart go with you, when the man got down from his carriage and went back to you? Is this a time for getting money, and clothing, and olive gardens and vine gardens, and sheep and oxen, and men servants and women servants? Because of what you have done, the disease of Naaman the leper will take you in its grip, and your seed after you, forever." And he went out from before him a leper as white as snow. Chapter 6. Now the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, "There is not room enough for us in the place where we are living under your care, so let us go to Jordan, and let everyone get to work cutting boards, and we will make a living place for ourselves there." And he said to them, "Go, then." And one of them said, "Be pleased to go with your servants." And he said, "I will go." So he went with them. And when they came to Jordan, they got to work cutting down trees. But one of them, while cutting a board, let the head of his axe go into the water, and he gave cry, and said, "This is a bad business, my master, for it is another's." And the man of God said, "Where did it go in?" And when he saw the place where it had gone into the water, cutting a stick, he put it into the water, and the iron came up to the top of the water. Then he said, "Take it up." So he put out his hand and took it. At that time the king of Aram was making war against Israel, and he had a meeting with the chiefs of his army and said, "I will be waiting in secret in some named place." And the man of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, "Take care to keep away from that place, for the Arameans are waiting there in secret." So the king of Israel sent to the place where the man of God had said there was danger, and kept clear of it more than once. And at this, the mind of the king of Aram was greatly troubled, and he sent for his servants and said to them, "Will you not make clear to me which of us is helping the king of Israel?" And one of them said, "Not one of us, my lord king, but Elisha, the prophet in Israel, gives the king of Israel news of the words you say even in your bedroom." Then he said, "Go and see where he is, so that I may send and get him." And news came to him that he was in Dothan. So he sent there horses and carriages and a great army, and they came by night, circling the town. Now the servant of the man of God, having got up early and gone out, saw an army with horses and carriages of war all round the town. And the servant said to him, "O my master, what are we to do?" And he said in answer, "Have no fear. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." Then Elisha made a prayer to the Lord, saying, "Lord, let his eyes be open so that he may see." And the Lord made the young man's eyes open, and he saw that all the mountain was full of horses and carriages of fire round Elisha. Now when the Arameans came down to Elisha, he made a prayer to the Lord saying, "Lord, make this people blind." And he made them blind at Elisha's request. And Elisha said to them, "This is not the way, and this is not the town. Come after me so that I may take you to the man you are searching for." And he took them to Samaria. And when they had come into Samaria, Elisha said, "Lord, let the eyes of these men be open so that they may see." And the Lord made their eyes open, and they saw that they were in the middle of Samaria. And the king of Israel, when he saw them, said to Elisha, "My father, am I to put them to the sword?" But he said in answer, "You are not to put them to death. Have you any right to put to death those whom you have not taken prisoner with your sword and your bow? Put bread and water before them, so that they may have food and drink and go to their master." So he made ready a great feast for them, and when they had had food and drink, he sent them away and they went back to their master. And no more bands of Arameans came into the land of Israel. Now after this, Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, got together all his army and went up to make an attack on Samaria, shutting the town in on all sides with his forces. And they became very short of food in Samaria, for they kept it shut in till the price of an ass's head was 80 shekels of silver, and a small measure of dove's droppings was 5 shekels of silver. And when the king of Israel was going by on the wall, a woman came crying out to him, and said, "Help! "My lord king." And he said, "If the Lord does not give you help, where am I to get help for you? From the grain floor or the grape crusher?" And the king said to her, "What is troubling you?" And she said in answer, "This woman said to me, 'Give your son to be our food today, and we will have my son tomorrow.' So, boiling my son, we had a meal of him, and on the day after I said to her, 'Now give your son for our food,' but she has put her son in a secret place." Then the king, hearing what the woman said, took his robes in his hands, violently parting them, and, while he was walking on the wall, the people, looking, saw that under his robe he had haircloth on his flesh. Then he said, "May God's punishment come on me if Elisha, the son of Shaphat, keeps his head on his body after this day." But Elisha was in his house, and the responsible men were seated there with him, and before the king got there, Elisha said to those who were with him, "Do you see how this cruel and violent man has sent to take away my life?" While he was still talking to them, the king came down and said, "This evil is from the Lord. Why am I to go on waiting any longer for the Lord?" Chapter 7. Then Elisha said, "Give ear to the word of the Lord. The Lord says, tomorrow, about this time, a measure of good meal will be offered for the price of a shekel and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, in the marketplace of Samaria." Then the captain whose arm was supporting the king said to the man of God, "Even if the Lord made windows in heaven, would such a thing be possible?" And he said, "Your eyes will see it, but you will not have a taste of the food." Now there were 4 lepers seated at the doorway into the town, and they said to one another, "Why are we waiting here for death? If we say, 'We will go into the town,' there is no food in the town, and we will come to our end there, and if we go on waiting here, death will come to us. Come then, let us give ourselves up to the army of Aram. If they let us go on living, then life will be ours, and if they put us to death, then death will be ours." So in the half-light they got up to go to the tents of Aram, but when they came to the outer line of tents, there was no one there, for the Lord had made the sound of carriages and horses, and the noise of a great army, come to the ears of the Arameans, so that they said to one another, "Truly, the king of Israel has got the kings of the Hittites and of the Egyptians for a price to make an attack on us." So they got up and went in flight, in the half-light, without their tents or their horses or their asses or any of their goods. They went in flight, fearing for their lives. And when those lepers came to the outer line of tents, they went into one tent, and had food and drink, and took from it silver and gold and clothing, which they put in a secret place. Then they came back and went into another tent from which they took more goods, which they put away in a secret place. Then they said to one another, "We are not doing right. Today is a day of good news, and we say nothing. If we go on waiting here till the morning, punishment will come to us. So let us go and give the news to those of the king's house." So they came in, and, crying out to the doorkeepers of the town, they gave them the news, saying, "We came to the tents of the Arameans, and there was no one there and no voice of man, only the horses and the asses in their places, and the tents as they were." Then the doorkeepers, crying out, gave the news to those inside the king's house. Then the king got up in the night and said to his servants, "This is my idea of what the Arameans have done to us. They have knowledge that we are without food, and so they have gone out of their tents, and are waiting secretly in the open country, saying, 'When they come out of the town, we will take them living and get into the town.'" And one of his servants said in answer, "Send men and let them take 5 of the horses which we still have in the town. If they keep their lives they will be the same as those of Israel who are still living here. If they come to their death they will be the same as all those of Israel who have gone to destruction. Let us send and see." So they took 2 horsemen, and the king sent them after the army of the Arameans, saying, "Go and see." And they went after them as far as Jordan, and all the road was covered with clothing and vessels dropped by the Arameans in their flight. So those who were sent went back and gave the news to the king. Then the people went out and took the goods from the tents of the Arameans. So a measure of good meal was to be had for the price of a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, as the Lord had said. And the king gave authority to that captain, on whose arm he was supported, to have control over the doorway into the town, but he was crushed to death there under the feet of the people, as the man of God had said when the king went down to him. So the words of the man of God came true, which he said to the king, 2 measures of barley will be offered for the price of a shekel, and a measure of good meal for a shekel, tomorrow about this time in the marketplace of Samaria. And that captain said to the man of God, even if the Lord made windows in heaven, would such a thing be possible? And he said to him, your eyes will see it, but you will not have a taste of the food. And such was his fate. For he was crushed to death under the feet of the people, in the doorway into the town. Chapter 8. Now Elisha had said to the woman whose son he had given back to life, go now, with all the people of your house, and get a living place for yourselves wherever you are able, for by the word of the Lord, there will be great need of food in the land, and this will go on for 7 years. So the woman got up and did as the man of God said, and she and the people of her house were living in the land of the Philistines for 7 years. And when the 7 years were ended, the woman came back from the land of the Philistines and went to the king with a request for her house and her land. Now the king was talking with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, saying, now, give me an account of all the great things Elisha has done. And while he was giving the king the story of how Elisha had given life to the dead, the woman whose son had come back to life came to the king with a request for her house and her land. And Gehazi said, my lord king, this is the woman and this is her son, whose life Elisha gave back to him. And in answer to the king's questions, the woman gave him all the story. So the king gave orders to one of his unsexed servants, saying, give her back all her property, and all the produce of her fields from the day when she went away from the land up till now. And Elisha came to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, was ill, and they said to him, the man of God has come. Then the king said to Hazael, take an offering with you, and go to see the man of God and get directions from the Lord by him, saying, am I going to get better from my disease? So Hazael went to see him, taking with him 40 camels with offerings on their backs of every sort of good thing from Damascus. And when he came before him, he said, your son Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, has sent me to you, saying, will I get better from this disease? And Elisha said to him, go, say to him, you will certainly get better, but the Lord has made it clear to me that only death is before him. And he kept his eyes fixed on him till he was shamed, and the man of God was overcome with weeping. And Hazael said, why is my lord weeping? Then he said in answer, because I see the evil which you will do to the children of Israel, burning down their strong towns, putting their young men to death with the sword, smashing their little ones against the stones, and cutting open the women who are with child. And Hazael said, how is it possible that your servant, who is only a dog, will do this great thing? And Elisha said, the Lord has made it clear to me that you will be king over Aram. Then he went away from Elisha and came in to his master, who said to him, what did Elisha say to you? And his answer was, he said that you would certainly get well. Now on the day after, Hazael took the bed cover, and making it wet with water, put it over Ben-Hadad's face, causing his death, and Hazael became king in his place. In the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, became king. He was 32 years old when he became king, and he was ruling in Jerusalem for 8 years. He went in the ways of the kings of Israel, as the family of Ahab did. For the daughter of Ahab was his wife, and he did evil in the eyes of the Lord. But it was not the Lord's purpose to send destruction on Judah, because of David his servant, to whom he had given his word that he would have a light forever. In his time, Edom made themselves free from the rule of Judah, and took a king for themselves. Then Joram went over to Zair, with all his war carriages, and made an attack by night on the Edomites, whose forces were all round him, and the captains of the war carriages, and the people went in flight to their tents. So Edom made themselves free from the rule of Judah to this day. And at the same time, Lebanon made itself free. Now the rest of the acts of Joram, and all he did, are they not recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah? And Joram went to rest with his fathers and was put into the earth with his fathers in the town of David, and Ahaziah his son became king in his place. In the 12th year that Joram, the son of Ahab, was king of Israel, Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, became king. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he became king, and he was ruling in Jerusalem for 1 year. His mother's name was Athaliah, the daughter of Omri, king of Israel. He went in the ways of the family of Ahab, and did evil in the eyes of the Lord as the family of Ahab did, for he was a son-in-law of the family of Ahab. He went with Joram, the son of Ahab, to make war on Hazael, king of Aram, at Ramoth-Gilead, and Joram was wounded by the Arameans. So King Joram went back to Jezreel to get well from the wounds which the bowmen had given him at Ramah, when he was fighting against Hazael, king of Aram. And Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel, because he was ill. Chapter 9. And Elisha the prophet sent for one of the sons of the prophets, and said to him, Make yourself ready for a journey, and take this bottle of oil in your hand, and go to Ramoth-Gilead. And when you get there, go in search of Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, and go in and make him get up from among his brothers, and take him to an inner room. Then take the bottle and put the oil on his head, and say, The Lord says, I have put the holy oil on you to make you king over Israel. Then, opening the door, go in flight, without waiting. So the young prophet went to Ramoth-Gilead. And when he came, he saw the captains of the army seated together, and he said, I have something to say to you, O captain. And Jehu said, To which of us? And he said, To you, O captain. And he got up and went into the house. Then he put the holy oil on his head and said to him, The Lord, the God of Israel, says, I have made you king over the people of the Lord, over Israel. You are to see that the family of Ahab your master is cut off, so that I may take from Jezebel payment for the blood of my servants the prophets, and for the blood of all the servants of the Lord. For the family of Ahab will come to an end, every male of Ahab's family will be cut off, he who is shut up and he who goes free in Israel. I will make the family of Ahab like that of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and Baasha, the son of Ahijah. And Jezebel will become food for the dogs in the heritage of Jezreel, and there will be no one to put her body into the earth. Then, opening the door, he went in flight. Then Jehu came out again to the servants of his lord, and one said to him, Is all well? Why did this man, who is off his head, come to you? And he said to them, You have knowledge of the man and of his talk. And they said, That is not true. Now give us his story. Then he said, This is what he said to me. The Lord says, I have made you king over Israel. Then straightway everyone took his robe and put it under him on the top of the steps, and, sounding the horn, they said, Jehu is king. So Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, made designs against Joram. Now Joram and all the army of Israel were keeping watch on Ramoth-Gilead because of Hazael, king of Aram, but King Joram had gone back to Jezreel to get well from the wounds which the Arameans had given him when he was fighting against Hazael, king of Aram. And Jehu said, If this is your purpose, then let no one get away and go out of the town to give news of it in Jezreel. So Jehu got into his carriage and went to Jezreel, for Joram was ill in bed there, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, had come down to see Joram. And the watchman on the tower in Jezreel saw Jehu and his band coming, and said, I see a band of people. And Joram said, Send out a horseman to them, and let him say, Is it peace? So a horseman went out to them and said, The king says, Is it peace? And Jehu said, What have you to do with peace? Come after me. And the watchman gave them word, saying, The horseman went up to them, but has not come back. Then he sent out a second horseman, who came up to them and said, The king says, Is it peace? And Jehu said in answer, What have you to do with peace? Come after me. And the watchman gave them word, saying, "He went up to them and has not come back again, and the driving is like the driving of Jehu, son of Nimshi, for he is driving violently." Then Joram said, "Make ready." So they made his carriage ready, and Joram, king of Israel, with Ahaziah, king of Judah, went out in their carriages for the purpose of meeting Jehu, and they came face to face with him at the field of Naboth the Jezreelite. Now when Joram saw Jehu he said, "Is it peace, Jehu?" And he said in answer, "What peace is possible while all the land is full of the disgusting sins of your mother Jezebel, and her secret arts?" Then Joram, turning his horses in flight, said to Ahaziah, "Broken faith, O Ahaziah." Then Jehu took his bow in his hand, and with all his strength sent an arrow, wounding Joram between the arms, and the arrow came out at his heart, and he went down on his face in his carriage. Then Jehu said to Bidkar, his captain, "Take him up, and put him in the field of Naboth the Jezreelite, for is not that day in your memory when you and I together on our horses were going after Ahab, his father, and the Lord put this fate on him, saying, I saw the blood of Naboth and of his sons yesterday, and I will give you full payment in this field, says the Lord. So now, take him and put him in this field, as the Lord said." Now when Ahaziah, king of Judah, saw this, he went in flight by the way of the garden house. And Jehu came after him and said, "Put him to death in the same way." And they gave him a death wound in his carriage, on the slope up to Gur, by Ablim, and he went in flight to Megiddo, where death came to him. And his servants took him in a carriage to Jerusalem, and put him into the earth with his fathers in the town of David. In the 11th year of the rule of Joram, the son of Ahab, Ahaziah became king over Judah, and when Jehu came to Jezreel, Jezebel had news of it, and, painting her eyes and dressing her hair with ornaments, she put her head out of the window. And when Jehu was coming into the town, she said, "Is all well, O Zimri, taker of your master's life?" Then, looking up to the window, he said, "Who is on my side, who?" And 2 or 3 unsexed servants put out their heads. And he said, "Take her and put her out of the window." So they sent her down with force, and her blood went in a shower on the wall and on the horses, and she was crushed under their feet. And he came in, and took food and drink. Then he said, "Now see to this cursed woman, and put her body into the earth, for she is a king's daughter." And they went out to put her body into the earth, but nothing of her was to be seen, only the bones of her head, and her feet, and parts of her hands. So they came back and gave him word of it. And he said, "This is what the Lord said by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, In the heritage of Jezreel the flesh of Jezebel will become food for dogs, and the dead body of Jezebel will be like waste dropped on the face of the earth in the heritage of Jezreel, so that they will not be able to say, This is Jezebel." Chapter 10. Now there were in Samaria 70 of Ahab's sons. And Jehu sent letters to Samaria, to the rulers of the town, and to the responsible men, and to those who had the care of the sons of Ahab, saying, "Straightway, when you get this letter, seeing that your master's sons are with you, and that you have carriages and horses and a walled town and arms, take the best and most upright of your master's sons, and make him king in his father's place, and put up a fight for your master's family." But they were full of fear, and said, "The 2 kings have gone down before him, how may we keep our place?" So the controller of the king's house, with the ruler of the town, and the responsible men, and those who had the care of Ahab's sons, sent to Jehu, saying, "We are your servants and will do all your orders. We will not make any man king. Do whatever seems best to you." Then he sent them a second letter, saying, "If you are on my side, and if you will do my orders, come to me at Jezreel by this time tomorrow, with the heads of your master's sons." Now the king's 70 sons were with the great men of the town, who had the care of them. And when the letter came to them, they took the king's sons and put them to death, all the 70, and put their heads in baskets and sent them to him at Jezreel. And a man came and said to him, "They have come with the heads of the king's sons." And he said, "Put them down in 2 masses at the doorway of the town till the morning." And in the morning he went out and, stopping, said to all the people there, "You are upright men. It is true that I made designs against my master, and put him to death, but who is responsible for the death of all these? You may be certain that nothing which the Lord has said about the family of Ahab will be without effect, for the Lord has done what he said by his servant Elijah." So Jehu put to death all the rest of the seed of Ahab in Jezreel, and all his relations and his near friends and his priests, till there were no more of them. Then he got up and came to Samaria. And he was at the meeting place of the keepers of sheep, by the way, when he came across the brothers of Ahaziah, king of Judah, and said, "Who are you?" And they said, "We are the brothers of Ahaziah, king of Judah. We are going down to see the children of the king and of the queen." And he said, "Take them living." So they took them living, and put them to death in the waterhole of Beth-Eked. Of the 42 men he put every one to death, and when he had gone away from there, he came across Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, and he said good day to him, and said to him, "Is your heart true to mine, as mine is to yours?" And Jehonadab in answer said, "It is." And Jehu said, "If it is, give me your hand." And he gave him his hand, and he made him come up into his carriage. And he said, "Come with me and see how I am on fire for the Lord's cause." So he made him go with him in his carriage. And when he came to Samaria, he put to death all those of Ahab's family who were still in Samaria, till there were no more of them, as the Lord had said to Elijah. Then Jehu got all the people together and said to them, "Ahab was Baal's servant in a small way, but Jehu will be his servant on a great scale. Now send for all the prophets of Baal and all his servants and all his priests, to come to me. Let no one keep away, for I have a great offering to make to Baal. Anyone who is not present will be put to death." This Jehu did with deceit, his purpose being the destruction of the servants of Baal. And Jehu said, "Let there be a special holy meeting for the worship of Baal." So a public statement was made, and Jehu sent out through all Israel, and all the servants of Baal came, not one kept away. And they came into the house of Baal, so that it was full from end to end. And Jehu said to him who kept the robes, "Get out robes for all the servants of Baal." So he got out robes for them. And Jehu, with Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, went into the house of Baal, and he said to the servants of Baal, "Make a search with care, to see that no servant of the Lord is with you, but only servants of Baal." Then they went in to make offerings and burnt offerings. Now Jehu had put 80 men outside, and said to them, "If any man whom I give into your hands gets away, the life of him who lets him go will be the price of his life." Then when the burnt offering was ended, straightway Jehu said to the armed men and the captains, "Go in and put them to death, let not one come out." So they put them to the sword, and, pulling the images to the earth, they went into the holy place of the house of Baal. And they took out the image of Asherah from the house of Baal, and had it burned. The altar of Baal was pulled down, and the house of Baal was broken up and made an unclean place, as it is to this day. So Jehu put an end to the worship of Baal in Israel. But Jehu did not keep himself from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and the evil he made Israel do. The gold oxen were still in Bethel and in Dan. And the Lord said to Jehu, "Because you have done well in doing what is right in my eyes and effecting all my purpose for the family of Ahab, your sons will be kings of Israel to the 4th generation." But Jehu did not take care to keep the law of the Lord with all his heart. He did not keep himself from the sin which Jeroboam did and made Israel do. In those days the Lord was angry first with Israel, and Hazael made attacks on all the land of Israel, east of Jordan, in all the land of Gilead, the Gadites and the Reubenites and the Manassites, from Aroer by the valley of the Arnon, all Gilead and Bashan. Now the rest of the acts of Jehu, and all he did, and his great power, are they not recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel? And Jehu went to rest with his fathers, and was put into the earth in Samaria. And Jehoahaz his son became king in his place. And the time of Jehu's rule over Israel and Samaria was 28 years. Chapter 11. Now when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she had all the rest of the seed of the kingdom put to death. But Jehosheba, the daughter of King Joram, sister of Ahaziah, secretly took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, with the woman who took care of him, away from among the king's sons who were put to death, and put him in the bedroom, and they kept him safe from Athaliah, so that he was not put to death. And for 6 years she kept him safe in the house of the Lord, while Athaliah was ruling over the land. Then in the 7th year, Jehoiada sent for the captains of hundreds of the Carians, and the armed men, and taking them into the house of the Lord, made an agreement with them, and made them take an oath in the house of the Lord, and let them see the king's son. And he gave them orders, saying, "This is what you are to do. The third part of you, who come in on the Sabbath and keep the watch of the king's house, and the 2 divisions of you, who go out on the Sabbath and keep the watch of the house of the Lord, will make a circle round the king, every man being armed, and whoever comes inside your lines is to be put to death. Keep with the king, when he goes out and when he comes in." And the captains of hundreds did as Jehoiada the priest gave them orders. Every one took with him his men, those who came in and those who went out on the Sabbath, and they came in to Jehoiada the priest. And the priest gave to the captains of hundreds the spears and body covers which had been King David's, and which were kept in the house of the Lord. Then the armed men took up their positions, every man with his instruments of war in his hand, from the right side of the house to the left, round about the altar and the house. Then he made the king's son come out, and put the crown on him and the armbands, and made him king, and put the holy oil on him, and they all, making sounds of joy with their hands, said, "Long life to the king." Now Athaliah, hearing the noise made by the people, came to the people in the house of the Lord, and looking, she saw the king in his regular place by the pillar, and the captains and the horns near him, and all the people of the land giving signs of joy and sounding the horns. Then Athaliah, violently parting her robes, gave a cry, saying, "Broken faith! Broken faith!" Then Jehoiada the priest gave orders to those who were placed in authority over the army, saying, "Take her outside the lines, and let anyone who goes after her be put to death with the sword." For he said, "Let her not be put to death in the house of the Lord." So they put their hands on her, and she went to the king's house by the doorway of the horses, and there she was put to death. And Jehoiada made an agreement between the Lord and the king and the people, that they would be the Lord's people, and in the same way between the king and the people. Then all the people of the land went to the house of Baal and had it pulled down. Its altars and images were all broken to bits, and Mattan, the priest of Baal, they put to death before the altars. And the priest put overseers over the Lord's house. Then he took the captains of hundreds, and the Carians, and the armed men, and all the people of the land, and they came down with the king from the house of the Lord, through the doorway of the armed men, to the king's house. And he took his place on the seat of the kings. So all the people of the land were glad, and the town was quiet, and they had put Athaliah to death with the sword at the king's house. And Jehoash was 7 years old when he became king. Chapter 12. In the 7th year of Jehu's rule, Jehoash became king, and he was ruling for 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah of Beersheba. Jehoash did what was right in the eyes of the Lord all his days, because he was guided by the teaching of Jehoiada the priest. But the high places were not taken away. The people went on making offerings and burning them in the high places. And Jehoash said to the priests, "All the money of the holy things, which comes into the house of the Lord, the amount fixed for every man's payment, and all the money given by any man freely from the impulse of his heart, let the priests take, every man from his friends and neighbors, to make good what is damaged in the house, wherever it is to be seen." But in the 23rd year of King Jehoash, the priests had not made good the damaged parts of the house. Then King Jehoash sent for Jehoiada the priest, and the other priests, and said to them, "Why have you not made good what is damaged in the house? Now take no more money from your neighbors, but give it for the building up of the house." So the priests made an agreement to take no more money from the people, and not to make good what was damaged in the house. But Jehoiada the priest took a chest, and making a hole in the cover of it, put it by the altar, on the right side when one comes into the house of the Lord, and the priests who kept the door put in it regularly all the money which was taken into the house of the Lord. And when they saw that there was much money in the chest, the king's scribe and the high priest came and put it in bags, noting the amount of all the money there was in the house of the Lord. And the money which was measured out they gave regularly to those who were responsible for overseeing the work, and these gave it in payment to the woodworkers and the builders who were working on the house of the Lord, and to the wall builders and the stone cutters, and to get wood and cut stone for building up the broken parts of the house of the Lord, and for everything needed to put the house in good order. But the money was not used for making silver cups or scissors or basins or wind instruments or any vessels of gold or silver for the house of the Lord, but it was all given to the workmen who were building up the house. And they did not get any statement of accounts from the man to whom the money was given for the workmen, for they made use of it with good faith. The money of the offerings for error and the sin offerings was not taken into the house of the Lord, it was the priests'. Then Hazael, king of Aram, went up against Gath and took it, and his purpose was to go up to Jerusalem. Then Jehoash, king of Judah, took all the holy things which Jehoshaphat and Jehoram and Ahaziah his fathers, the kings of Judah, had given to the Lord, together with the things he himself had given, and all the gold in the temple store and in the king's house, and sent it to Hazael, king of Aram, and he went away from Jerusalem. Now the rest of the acts of Joash, and all he did, are they not recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel? And his servants made a secret design and put Joash to death at the house of Milo on the way down to Silla. And Josachar, the son of Shemeth, and Jehozabad, the son of Shomer, his servants, came to him and put him to death, and they put him into the earth with his fathers in the town of David, and Amaziah his son became king in his place. Chapter 13. In the 23rd year of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, king of Judah, Jehoahaz, the son of Jehu, became king over Israel and Samaria, ruling for 17 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, copying the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he did and made Israel do. He did not keep himself from them. So the wrath of the Lord was burning against Israel, and he gave them up into the power of Hazael, king of Aram, and into the power of Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael, again and again. Then Jehoahaz made prayer to the Lord, and the Lord gave ear to him, for he saw how cruelly Israel was crushed by the king of Aram. And the Lord gave Israel a savior, so that they became free from the hands of the Arameans, and the children of Israel were living in their tents as in the past. But still they did not give up the sin of Jeroboam, which he made Israel do, but went on with it. And there was an image of Asherah in Samaria, for out of all his army, Jehoahaz had only 50 horsemen and 10 carriages and 10,000 footmen. The king of Aram had given them up to destruction, crushing them like dust. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoahaz, and all he did, and his great power, are they not recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel? And Jehoahaz went to rest with his fathers, and was put into the earth in Samaria, and Joash his son became king in his place. In the 37th year of the rule of Joash, king of Judah, Joash, the son of Jehoahaz, became king over Israel and Samaria, ruling for 16 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, not turning away from the sin of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he did and made Israel do, but he went on with it. Now the rest of the acts of Joash, and all he did, and the force with which he went to war against Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel? And Joash went to rest with his fathers, and Jeroboam took his place as king, and Joash was put into the earth in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Now Elisha became ill with the disease which was the cause of his death, and Joash, king of Israel, came down to him, and weeping over him said, my father, the war carriages of Israel and its horsemen. Then Elisha said to him, take bow and arrows, and he took bow and arrows. And he said to the king of Israel, put your hand on the bow, and he put his hand on it, and Elisha put his hands on the king's hands. Then he said, let the window be open to the east, and he got it open. Then Elisha said, let the arrow go, and he let it go. And he said, "The Lord's arrow of salvation over Aram. For you will overcome the Arameans in Aphek and put an end to them." And he said, "Take the arrows," and he took them. And he said to the king of Israel, "Send them down into the earth," and he did so 3 times and no more. Then the man of God was angry with him and said, "If you had done it 5 or 6 times, then you would have overcome Aram completely, but now you will only overcome them 3 times. And death came to Elisha and they put his body into the earth. Now in the spring of the year, armed bands of Moabites frequently came, overrunning the land, and while they were putting a dead man into the earth, they saw a band coming, and they put the man quickly into the place where Elisha's body was. And the dead man, on touching Elisha's bones, came to life again, and got up on his feet. And Israel was crushed under the power of Hazael, king of Aram, all the days of Jehoahaz. But the Lord was kind to them and had pity on them, caring for them, because of his agreement with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He would not put them to destruction or send them away from before his face till now. Then Hazael, king of Aram, came to his end, and Ben-Hadad his son became king in his place. And Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, took again from Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael, the towns which he had taken from Jehoahaz his father in war. 3 times Jehoash overcame him and got back the towns of Israel.